Well folks, here we are again. We are a year into L322 ownership. Can you believe that? The time has gone so quickly. In December 2021, my father-in-law Robin bought this car. A bit of a folly for him. He already had a few nice bits and pieces, but he knew I was driving my race car on the road between races, and he thought it would be a nice idea if we got a tow car. So that's the reason why we started looking around for a reasonable tow car. I had owned an L322 back in the day, the TD6 with the BMW 3-litre engine in it, and I said to him, it's probably the only car that I would ever own again. So we went on the search. Things had moved on, and the 4.4 litre TDV8 with the 8-speed box just fitted the ticket precisely. That and a car trailer saw my whole racing weekend change for the better, I have to say. So I owe a massive debt of gratitude to Robin for that. He passed away in the middle of the year, and has left a little bit of a hole in our lives. Anyway, a wad of paper here will tell us that we have spent a little bit of money on the L322. And this video is basically just to round up the year, do an annual review on the car. It's just been serviced. We've had a bill of over £2,000, over £2,000. We'll get that towards the end. So I just wanted to break down for anyone that is thinking of buying one of these cars that it's not for the faint-hearted. You've got to be prepared for some big bills. After all, it was a £70,000 car when it was new, and it needs to be treated as such. It's a complex four-wheel drive machine, mechanically complex as well as everything else. So best part of advice is know what you're getting into and get the vehicle inspected, hopefully before you buy the thing. And if you're in the UK, then hopefully you'll be protected by the Consumer Rights Act 2015 after purchase. If you've seen the 15 odd videos that I've done in this car, you will be well familiar with the story. But I'll recap, go through the year, go through the costs of what we did, and it give you an idea of what it's going to cost you to run one of these things. So in the 12 months, we've done near as damn it 10,000 miles. We bought the car, or rather Robin bought the car with about 88,000 miles on it, and right now it's sitting at 98,197. So there you go, pretty much 10,000 miles. Now, the cost of this car was just over £16,000. That was expensive and right at the top end of things, but it had a very good service history. It had 3 owners from new. It had a fully stamped book. It even had a gearbox service just the year before we had bought the thing. Robin paid £700 for an additional warranty. We didn't end up using any of that in the end, but if any of the big stuff had have gone wrong, then if we weren't covered within the Consumer Rights Act, then we would have been covered through the warranty. So I'm just going to tick the little boxes here. You'll see the costs rack up. So if you're going to follow the progress, then I'm going to put up some videos that we've done previously about when we purchased the car. When we bought the car initially, we knew that we only had one key with the vehicle. It was missing a parcel shelf. It had the main tow bar fitted, but it didn't actually have the removable bit with the car. What we didn't know when we purchased it was that the radio surround and the lights in that weren't illuminating. I've still got to fix that. I haven't quite got round to it. I've lived with it so far. And when we drove it home, the auxiliary belts were squeaking. So we took the car to Mark Smith Limited. That's our local Land Rover. They came well recommended within the area. but with no initial direct experience with them, being a Land Rover, Range Rover specialist and not having one of those vehicles. So we took it down there for the princely sum of £59 plus VAT. We got them to have a look around the car, and they highlighted a couple of other issues, that the rear prop shaft bearing, the central support bearing on the prop shaft at the rear, was totally gone. Now we went back then to where we purchased the vehicle. We essentially rejected it because they were playing silly buggers and basically saying that, well, you know what, you inspected the car, etc, etc, and I wasn't having any of that. So it got a little interesting. There were emails exchanged, including a registered letter saying that we were going to reject the vehicle under the Consumer Rights Act unless they fixed the prop shaft and they fixed the belts squeaking. So the belts were done. The prop shaft, Mark Smith recommended a brand new prop shaft would be fitted because that's the way they come from Land Rover. And the guys at Fort basically said that they weren't prepared to do that. They took the prop shaft, they took the car and the prop shaft, and they got it rebuilt. Now, it subsequently failed just about the year, just when we got it serviced here, but more of that later on. So I would strongly advise you to go and get the car inspected before purchase. And if you can't, or they won't allow that, have a good look around yourself. In the UK, you're protected, as I say, legally. The car needs to be fit for purpose, as described, and you get the right to reject the short-term rejection within 30 days. So all this needs to be done within the 30 days. You are still protected outside of 30 days up till 6 months, but the garages get a chance to fix the car, put it right. They get one time to do that. 6 months to a year, they can fix the vehicle, and if they can't, then you can reject it, but you will have to pay restocking or use, you know, about 45 pence a mile of use in depreciation. So we had the auxiliary belts replaced with the prop shaft rebuilt, and well, there were a few missing bits and pieces then that we knew that we had to sort. So the second key, instead of £1,000 that was quoted from Range Rover, we got that done independently for £320. The parcel shelf was £185, that was used off eBay. The tow bar, £156, and the radio surround was £80. Now, you can always improve a car, and the upgrades, mostly in the infotainment side of things, the little InVeri and the portable CarPlay unit. The InVeri Bluetooth costs us £89. There's links below, in fact, if you want to have a look at this and purchase it yourself, or have a little look at the video up above here. CarPlay was £179. It's absolutely invaluable. I love it, and that and the InVeri just brings it up into the modern era. We got a boot liner because, of course, we got a couple of nutty spaniels. That was £34. That's probably the best modification I have ever done on this. It's a fitted boot liner. We're well happy with all of that. I got some additional rubber mats. The Land Rover official ones are fantastic. £60 later off eBay. The fuel burning heater remote, or park heating as it's called, was £70, and there's a whole video about pairing the fob, which one to buy and which one not to buy, on the link above. So upgrades total £432. Now, daily use highlighted, simple fact that there was something not quite right with the windscreen surround. This car had a cracked windscreen and it was replaced before we actually sold the vehicle. But the guy that was installing the windscreen clearly didn't care about his job, because instead he broke a few of the clips, and the clips that he broke he just glued in with the same I suppose adhesive that the windscreen is used with, and they were failing. The things were flapping around. I was able to replace a few of the clips on one side, but the other side I broke trying to get it removed. So, £90 later off eBay, a brand new one, £3 for clips, and that was fixed, and it's stayed fixed since, and it's actually quietened down the car as the air is now going around the windscreen in the way it should. Now, occasionally we would hear the brakes squealing when we were driving along, when your foot wasn't actually on the brakes. I ordered some new front brake pads and got those in for £90. They were self-fitted. Now, at the same time, I noticed that one of the CV boots was split a little bit, and I could see some of the grease out there. Went back to Mark Smith, and £325 later, that was fixed. So we got all the way to May, and 3,000 miles later, so at 91,000 miles, I get a check engine light on the way to work. Restricted performance, there's the video. It turned out it was an exhaust temperature sensor, and £249 later at Mark Smith, that was completed. We went on holiday, and of course in Cornwall, it's not known for its wide roads, country roads. Me and an L200 came together. It was in one of those narrowed sections. I stopped, he didn't, and £125 later off eBay, I was able to get a replacement wing mirror. That was very lucky, in fact, and I was able to get that all installed myself. So finally, we come round to this month in December earlier on, 97,000 miles, 12 months later. I knew the side steps were rusty because I'm planning this single tank challenge from Land's End to John O'Groats, I suppose it's just under 850 miles on a single tank of fuel. So stand by for that. I was hoping to do a winter special on that one, but it was just far, far too cold. It would involve a bit of sleeping in the car, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. It was one of the week I had off and I was planning to do it, ended up being really cold and slippery, and I didn't want to be in the Highlands of Scotland and feel as if, well, I had to do a challenge. The fuel burning heater may have been on. I just didn't want to drive, put 18 hours of driving at that time. Anyway, I digress. Whilst trying to fit a little bit of memory foam into the back of the car, I stood on the rear of the steps, the side steps, and basically they crumbled. So I knew they were rusty. I then got onto eBay, another special, and £190, believe it or not, so it's with some new side steps. Now I was going to get the car serviced and MOT'd, and I was going to get Mark Smith to actually, Mark Smith Limited, the Bicester Land Rover, to fit the side steps as well. I just didn't have the time. It was cold. I don't have a garage, and it turned out, in fact, that they were welded on, so there was a bit more work involved. 4 hours to be precise, even with these guys with the correct equipment. So let's look at this, the service, the MOT, the side steps. Mark Smith are great. They're £59 plus VAT. Compare that to over £200 at Range Rover, and you'll see why these guys are my go-to. So it had an inspection too, which involves obviously oil, filter, pollen filter, fuel filter, the battery and the key fob, and some screen wash. And during the inspection, they noticed that the rebuilt prop shaft had failed. The offside rear upper knuckle joint had failed as well. So maybe at this point, it's appropriate to cut straight to Chris, and he'll show us what was going on with the prop shaft. So, show us what you do, Chris. Yeah, show us. You know what? Show us what happened. So all that movement. So there's what? Is there like a rubber? Let me go and get a loose one off of the Defender. So when you inspected that last time round and it needed replacement, is that the bit that you were referring to? So it's that was the bit you were referring to. Okay, fair enough. But you'd like to hope that if they had actually split it, do you think they'd split it to replace that?
Well, yeah, because there's a bolt there. So
Okay.
So you can take that bit
to
take the bearing off.
So have they then, has there been an issue with knocking that out and
quite possibly.
Yeah.
Because the peen it over.
Yeah, to stop it.
If it hasn't been peened, then that will just start walking off the shaft. And obviously it's only tiny little roller bearings in there.
Yeah.
And they're the same as these, it's just a bigger scale.
And that's what happens, it just...
Yeah.
Okay. And these would have been little weights that were added, obviously, to balance it, these sorts of things, aren't they? Yeah. I know what you mean. So it didn't even last the year.
No.
Hence, replacement was actually the way to go, which is what you guys said straight off. Yeah. Well, there you go. So it just goes to show there's a lesson to be learned in all of that, isn't there? Actually, do it properly. You know. But this is what happens with garages. So there you go. That's the prop shaft explanation. He didn't want me to drive to Scotland on that, and we ended up doing what he had recommended all along, was to fit a brand new prop shaft from Land Rover. So this was a big bill. This was over £2,000, but I'll try and break it down a little bit so that you can understand where the costs were involved. The MOT was £63. For the service, the labour, and that includes the prop shaft and the bushes, was about 6 hours of labour at £354. The service parts were £379, made the inspection to service total about £733. Now it's probably cheaper than that if you take off the prop shaft and the bush, but that's not bad for an inspection too, which is the big one. The prop shaft itself, £759. Is any wonder that Ford Autos didn't want to put a brand new one in there and they just got it rebuilt. But in the end it failed, so the right thing to do was exactly what Chris had suggested all along, and fitting the brand new unit. The bush was £31, so that made basically the parts for that £790. Side steps were £190, 4 hours labour fitting them, £283. So for the total for the service, the MOT, the prop shaft, the side steps, and I got a spare fuel filter, which was £60. Total £2,119. That stung, I have to say, but it needed to be done, and it's the big service. So let's look about the costs, the annual running costs, a slightly different way. We have spent a little bit putting the car right, so that includes things like the second key, the tow bar, the parcel shelf, etc. That was £810. So the car, as it stands, after purchase and warranty, was £17,649. Now that sounds an awful lot. Anyway, upgrades to the infotainment, so the boot liner, the mats, the CarPlay, the fuel burning heater remote and the windscreen surround, that comes to £525. Me being a dick and catching a wing mirror, £125. Servicing and fault fixes, servicing and maintenance and fault fixes, £2,783. Now, you wouldn't have to do all of that, so I think it's easier for me to break it down into a final list of costs, to the costs not including the purchase price. So total cost for this vehicle over the year has cost us £4,183. Now, you do not have to upgrade the vehicle, you don't have to replace wing mirrors if you don't catch them, you don't have to do side steps, etc. So I'm going to take the cost off that. The cost in putting the car right was £834, so that was parcel shelf and tow bar. Upgrades to the infotainment, so streaming Bluetooth in the in-variant CarPlay, etc., etc., £432. Me being a dick, £125. Side steps, £473. So if you remove all of that from the 4183, it comes up at £2,319 of unavoidable costs. Now that all works out at about £193 per calendar month. £2,300 a year. Okay, it's a complex car. I wouldn't have expected quite that much, but the figures don't lie. If you want to convert that to US dollars for all my American watchers here, that's $2,783. The book does not lie, the invoices do not lie, the eBay receipts do not lie. So this car is not for the faint-hearted. On the positive side though, I always want to end my videos on a positive note. This is a sublime car to live with, to drive on a day-to-day basis. You've got that invincibility, you've got that poise, you've got that feeling that you can go anywhere. And it's all about feeling. I keep harping on about that for all the cars that I actually own. And this feels right. Mrs. T, she loves it. She uses it for work on a regular basis, and it does over 30 miles to the gallon on a run. So, on that note, are we disappointed that we bought an L322? Absolutely not. If you're after a tow car, if you're after something with a bit of style, a bit of grace, and it's just a wonderful place to be. I would easily cross continents in this car, and you just know that you're going to get there. So on that positive note, that's the L322 annual review. Until the next time, all the best now. Bye-bye.